Evening. Oh, let me know if you could hear that sound effect, by the way. Yeah, there's about an 8-second lag from when I hit go live to when I saw it come up on my YouTube. So yeah, hopefully that won't stop the comments. We've already got some comments coming straight in. We've got Mickey Aquariums who's joined us live in chat. And then we've got the lovely Courtney. The anticipation is killing me. And good evening. Good evening to you guys. Here I am live by myself again. It's been a crazy 2 weeks. I come with the G-Star Vault live every 3 weeks out of 4. So every 3 Sundays a month. So obviously I have one Sunday off. And then, so last week was my normal Sunday off. And then the week before that, unfortunately, my guests, the guys from the Unexplained Files, had to cancel at last minute due to a personal incident. And my heart goes out to them. But I'm sure they'll reschedule for me when things settle down. And we'll be back with them guesting on the show. I've obviously got a bit of a new layout. We're on podcast number 4. And already I've got bored of the old layout. So I've changed the layout again. So again, in live chat, if you can let me know what you think of the new layout. And I've got my lovely new G-Star Vault sign, courtesy of my beautiful beloved other half. And so I'm really glad to showcase that. So here you are on G-Star Vault, and welcome if you're new. If you are new, or if you are not, as always, please don't forget to like this stream. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And just always remember, sharing is caring. Yeah, so I've got some sound effects and stuff like that. So let me know if they were coming through. I've just used an applause at the moment, but I've got some other ones.
Let the games begin. Let the games begin.
So let me know if they're coming. That's coming through. It would be good to sense check. Evening, Sean. Welcome along to G-Star Vault Live. Thank you for popping along, and thanks for your comment. Live logs and prosper. When's the merch drop? Courtney's asking. Yes, I am wearing merch as well for my other channel, The Underground Paradox. I don't know. Let's move the microphone out of the way. There we go. Underground Paradox. It's on the back of this video as well in big. Yeah, so just testing out some new merch, but yeah, that's a plug for my other channel, The Underground Paradox. If you haven't checked that one out yet, please do. Link is in the description again. Check that one out, and please subscribe and give me your support there. That always helps. So yeah, I hope you guys are all well. Let me know in comments. Audio all good. Does that mean my sound effects are coming through? Guy with a crazy voice, let me know, please. That'd be awesome. And so this week we are here to talk all about the UAP hearings and what I'm calling the circle of disclosure, and that'll become apparent very shortly what that's all about. Yep, can hear it, says Mickey. Awesome. Thanks, Mickey. That is outstanding. Yes, so circle of disclosure, I'll explain that in just a little while. But originally, I wasn't going to do a live about the UAP hearings because I've talked about them a lot on this channel before, and possibly my other channel, don't know. But so I guess if you are watching the channel and you are a subscriber, you'll pretty much know my previous thoughts and feelings on the UAP hearing. So this time round, because there's been two lots of new hearings, one from, well, I loosely say Congress, and I'll come back to that in just a moment as well. And then there was also one that took place in the Senate, which are two different sections of the US government. And so that's been happening, and that was basically in November. Both of them took place in November. One on I think it was either the 7th, and then I think the other one from the Senate was on the 13th. So Congress went first, and then it was the Senate after. Now, as I said, I wasn't originally going to do a live on these again, but I'm just getting so frustrated. Not just frustrated at the hearings themselves, but frustrated at the reaction within, especially, I wouldn't actually say ufology circles. I would actually say just more mainstream public circles, and the way that people are getting excited, and lots of people are talking about, do you think there's going to be this disclosure? And the reason why I'm so frustrated, and this all came to a head at the beginning of this week, is that I guess, first of all, the first thing I should do is say, who am I? Especially if you're tuning in new to the channel, who am I? Am I a believer in ufology and UFOs? Am I a skeptic? No, I'm neither of those things. The best way that I can think to describe what I am, and probably why I was such a fan of X-Files, is all about the poster in the background. I want to believe. That's the best way to describe myself. I want to believe. But why have I got this interest and this passion in ufology? Well, it all stems back to a potential experience that I had when I was 14. And and I'm not going to talk about that tonight because that would take far too long. And I haven't ever really talked about it in length on either of my channels before, only on a couple of other people's channels. And I'll explain that again in a moment. But I refer to it as a potential experience because even I can logically offer some conclusions to explain elements of my experience, like things like sleep paralysis. And, so because I can present and understand why lots and lots of people would come up with logical conclusions of what experience I felt I had. And just to sort of mention, it happened around when I was 14 in 1988. It took me 3 years to even first start talking about it to anybody. And it's really difficult to talk about. And the reason why it's difficult to talk about is because, very much like what I started off saying at the beginning of the podcast, is it just creates this feeling of frustration because I have no definitive answers and I have no evidence that I can offer anybody. So the question would then come up straight away. So why don't you then forget about it? Why is it so important? If you've got logical explanations, and you can think about other reasonings behind it, and why is it so important to hold on to it, and why is it so important to me? And the best way that I can describe it is, and again, this sounds really sad using a film as an analogy, but I have before when I've talked about this. And there's a film from, I think it was in the 90s now, called Contact, with Jodie Foster in it. And at the end of that film, and we'll talk a little bit more about this film a bit later, but at the end of that film, she's stood there in front of the US government at this hearing, and this guy saying to her, the obvious evidence shows that this billionaire genius inventor created this elaborate hoax. And as a scientist, would you agree with that? And she says, yes. And so therefore, he's basically then saying to her, well, if you would agree with all of that, then why do you continue this charade of saying that you had this experience? And she goes on to say that it's because everything inside her says it was real. And, harking back to my own experience of 14, I've thought about the fact that, it's easily explainable by a prolific dream. But, there's never been another dream that I've ever had in my life that I've held on to for 30 years and still am preoccupied day to day, with the contents of that dream. So the reason why I can't let go and the reason why I want to believe, and I'm still searching for answers, is because everything inside me says that there was something to that experience. And again, on the Underground Paradox, the strapline is the search for truth. And on the vault, it's here on G Star Vault, it's the safe place of paranormal evidence. And again, I don't naturally just believe, as part of that wanting to believe. And what we do here on the vault is, we kind of look at breaking it down and come at it from a research and investigation point of view. And then sometimes we end up having to disprove things. We don't set out to disprove anything. But again, we've got to be in that research and investigation. We've got to be honest with what we see and what we find. So let me know what you think in comments about that whole I want to believe. Would you put yourselves in the believe category? Would you put yourself in the skeptic category? Or would you put yourself, as a I want to believe, and sat somewhere in the middle? And again, even with my own experience, I sit on the fence. I don't say it was an experience. I say it was a potential experience. But it's that frustration around this whole thing that brings my passion into ufology. And then being presented with what are called these congressional hearings, and everybody getting excited about them. It's the thing for me. It's nothing new, and we're going to talk about that a little bit when it comes to the circle of disclosure. Even in my lifetime, because I've been interested in ufology for 30 years, I've seen a cycle of where there was what we felt like a time when we were on the precipice of disclosure, and then it kind of went away and it went to the reverse of that. And then here we are again, certainly back in 2022, with, what was previously classified evidence being shared in a government environment, in a public hearing, for the world to see. And we felt like we were on the precipice of disclosure. But after these latest round of UAP hearings, well, are we? I don't know. Let's talk about it. And again, your comments are really, really important this evening. So let me know what you think, and I'll bring it up on screen. It'd be great for you guys to be part of this conversation. Whether you are watching this live right now, and you can put those comments in live chat, or whether you're watching it post live, please then give me your comments and give me your thoughts on the UAP hearings. So I first of all want to talk about the one that went first, and that was the congressional hearings. And I loosely say congressional hearings, as I said earlier, because these hearings do take place in congressional buildings. And I'm not saying that they're not a hearing of congressional, because they do involve members of Congress, but it's a subcommittee. So basically, this main subcommittee that have been dealing with the latest round of hearings, and since all of this has been going on with Congress, that was in front of the Committee of Oversight and Accountability. Really funny that they've got oversight in their name. Could be taken one of two ways. But these guys are minor Congress members. It's a subcommittee, and they're minor, not particularly powerful or influential members of Congress. If you were to think about UK government in our terms, it would be like backbenchers being given this job of kind of managing these subcommittee hearings. Anyway, so the hearings that took place, as I said, they took place in November. I think it was November 13th, actually, and then the Senate hearings landed on November the 19th. And in this latest wave, we had four main people giving testimony at the hearings. We had Dr. Tim Gallowet, who's a rear admiral in the US Navy, but he's retired now. And he's also the CEO of Ocean STL Consulting. He's a doctor as well, so he's obviously got a doctorate in certain studies. I think it's around oceanographic and what's the other one? To do with like landscaping. But anyway, pretty intelligent man, and also a retired rear admiral from the US Navy. Then you've got Luis Elizondo. He's an author, but primarily his purpose and reason for being there, although you wouldn't think it watching the hearings, given how much he plugged his book, but he is a former Department of Defense senior official. So he was a senior official in the DoD. And then you had Michael Gold, who was a former NASA associate. I'm reading all of these. I've actually gone on to the subcommittee of oversight and accountability. I've gone onto their website, and I'm going to go through some of the documents with you tonight as part of this review of the hearings. But this is how they describe these individuals. So Michael Gold is a former NASA associate, administrator of space policy and partnerships, and he's a member of the NASA UAP independent study team. Now, it's important to read everything that digest everything you're reading, because I looked at that and I went, a member of the NASA UAP independent study team. So it's the word independent that interests me, because I'm thinking, is this, because I don't think he's with NASA at the moment. I think he's retired and moved on, as it said, former NASA associate. But whether it's a group of people that are independent, maybe they've worked for NASA or they're part of NASA, but they're independent of NASA, and they're a study team. So they're a group of people that get together and talk about things that they've seen or whatever. I don't know. That's the way I read it. Let me know in comments what you think. And then our fourth and final person that was giving testimony at this latest round of hearings with the Congress was a gentleman by the name of Michael Schellenberger. And on the website of the Oversight and Accountability Committee, it actually describes him as founder of Public. That's it. I don't know exactly what that means, but to put some clarification on it, Michael Schellenberger is a journalist. Some people feel like he's pretty. What's Mickey's comment there? I've watched parts of the hearing and all the other crazy stuff going on with the UAPs and UFOs. This past year feels like a build-up to something, but who knows what. Okay, cool. Thanks for your thoughts, Mickey. Yeah, let me know, guys, in chat like Mickey has, what you think and whether you think we're coming towards disclosure or not. And I'm just going to give you my thoughts and views and opinions as we go on throughout this evening. So yeah, we have those four people giving their testimony. And in a little while, I am going to, should have got these ready before, but didn't. There you go. Not particularly well prepped, but I'm going to go through some of the documents with you, primarily the actual testimony of some of the witnesses that were there in front of Congress, because you can go through and watch the hearings, but parts of it don't read as well as or come across as well as they do if you read some of the guys' testimonies. I will be playing you part of the hearings. I can't remember exactly how long the oversight and accountability meeting was. I think it was easily over an hour, but I've sandwiched it down to 5 minutes of highlights, which I'm going to share with you via video, so you will get to see some of them and get to see the key things. But yeah, I've got the testimonies all ready to go of some of the guys, and I'm going to start with Michael Gold, but I'll do that after we do the video. So grab yourself a drink and get comfortable. This video is about 5 minutes long. I wanted to show you this because we need some context, right? Just in case you haven't watched the hearings. I'm sure most of you have. And whilst we're watching this, definitely drop your thoughts and views and opinions in to the live chat, please. That'd be awesome. Okay.
You will hear them deliver today does not reflect well on influential individuals and agencies within the U.S. federal government and perhaps some of our contractors.
AARO and the Pentagon have broken the law by not revealing a significant body of information about UAPs, including military intelligence databases, that have evidence of their existence as physical craft.
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing, and there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that. On that score, I want to thank our witnesses for being here. We have before us a panel of individuals accomplished in the military, in civilian government, in science, and in journalism. Adding to this is a runaway overclassification of documents and materials, a reluctance to declassify materials when appropriate, and at times an outright refusal to share critical information with Congress.
Let me be clear. UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies.
Since my reporting on this Immaculate Constellation last month, another source came forward who told me that they saw a roughly 13-minute long, high-definition, full-color video of a white orb UAP coming out of the ocean approximately 20 miles off the coast of Kuwait. It was filmed from a helicopter. Then halfway through the video, the person said the orb is joined by another orb that briefly comes into the frame from the left before rapidly moving again out of the frame. The person discovered the video on SIPR, the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network, which the DoD uses to transmit classified information.
But Mr. Schellenberger, I wanted to ask you, I think I understand from this hearing that you would agree that classifying information like this is not in the best interest of the people. Is that correct?
Okay, Mr. Elizondo, you state in your testimony that, quote, advanced technologies not by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe, end quote. If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
It may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss
Okay.
it.
Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval program?
So I'm just going to pause it there. I mean, one thing that probably doesn't get covered a lot in my highlights is that if you guys have read the hearings, there was a lot of, I can't talk about this again. It would need to be in a closed room. And not just from the people that would have signed affidavits, military documents to say, you know, that they're not allowed to talk about certain things. There was even other members of this testimony panel that are non-military that were still saying, I can't talk about that. And it was frustrating, and it came up a lot. But you just heard it just then. I just wanted to point it out.
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book?
And this guy, you know, Louis Elizondo, seen a lot of him over the last sort of 4 to 5 years in the world of ufology. But he certainly used this opportunity to plug his book.
Is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
Yes.
Representative Luna just told me if I say Immaculate Constellation, I'll be on some list, maybe a FISA warrant. So come at me, bro, I guess. But
okay, I'm just going to pause it here. I've made a big thing about this Immaculate Constellation. It's something that Michael Schellenberger, who's the journalist, talks about in his testimony, both in front of Congress and the written testimony afterwards. Obviously, the written one goes into it in a lot more detail, but hopefully this next bit is going to give you a bit of a summary of what they're talking about and what they're referring to when it comes to Immaculate Constellation.
The report that was just shared with Congress says Immaculate Constellation serves as a central or parent USAP that consolidates observations of UAPs by both tasked and untasked collection platforms. Immaculate Constellation includes...
It's really important to hone in on that expression of tasked and untasked. What it's basically saying is known projects and projects that have not been authorized or requested.
High-quality imagery intelligence and measurement and signature intelligence of UAPs, the whistleblower's report adds. I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
High res.
images, high res.
During this exercise, I received an email.
Now, this is the guy that I want to talk a lot about. This is the guy, he's a rear, he was a rear admiral in the US Navy, retired now, very, very intelligent guy, got all sorts of, degrees and, knows a lot about the ocean.
Email on Navy's secure network from the operations officer of U.S. Fleet Forces Command. The email is addressed to all the subordinate commanders, and the subject line read in all capital letters, "Urgent Safety of Flight Issue." The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, "If any of you know what these are, tell me ASAP." The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implication of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects. The very next day, that email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation. Moreover, the commander of Fleet Forces Command and the operations officer never discussed the subject. Even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. Equally concerning, last year's UAP hearing also revealed that elements of the government are engaged in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. Having never signed a non-disclosure agreement regarding UAPs, and now as a private citizen, I've become an advocate for greater UAP transparency from the government.
There we go. Right, let's get back to this and let's remove that one. Yeah, so they're just some of the highlights that have popped out. I hope you guys are still with me. Keep your thoughts coming on what you've just heard there. Just going to touch on a couple of things because overall, I mean, that's all it took was about 5 minutes of of the best information that you can pull. A lot of it was just a lot of information that we've already heard before, and then definitely a lot more of the saying can't talk about it in this open situation, would need to discuss it in a private meeting, and so it still leaves you with that overriding sort of thing that if you were trying to do some sort of serious hearing, if you had people giving testimony that couldn't actually present any evidence on what you're actually testifying against, then you would instantly just go next and move on. Like, I don't know what all the song and dance in the show is. And again, you guys will have heard me speak in the past about how, I think a lot of this is in some way smoke screens. I in the video, I brought the attention to the Immaculate Constellation. I hope you guys got what they were talking about there. And again, this comes from, a lot of this comes from Schellenberger's testimony. And, but it's something that a lot of people in certain circles around these congressional committees are talking about. You heard one of the congressmen joking about it there, saying that I would be put on a list if I talk about this. And again, we'll just cover Schellenberger a little bit and the Immaculate Constellation. So in conclusion, it shows that USG, which stands for the US government, is not only aware of UAPs and technology from unknown origin, but also foreign state efforts to replicate UAP and technology of unknown origin capabilities. The data within Immaculate Constellation reveals the capacity of the US Armed Services and the military intelligence community to detect, track, identify, and engage anomalous transmedium platforms. And what they're saying is generally the gist of Immaculate Constellation is that there's a lot of parties and different people involved, groups of people involved in this that are not getting an official stamp of approval for their actions and the things that they're doing and the data and the information that they're keeping. But again, what we've got to step back just one moment for and just look at it from both sides of the fence. And I'm just going to bring, because that what I read you off of, I've just taken the lovely Courtney, who was with us in chat and has been commenting. He sent me actually a document that came straight off, I believe, the Congress website just after the hearings. And this document, I think, is a summary of Schellenberger's testimony. And part of that testimony was him saying that he's got this source within the government that shared all this information with him. But in the hearings, typically, Schellenberger refused to comment on providing any evidence and any details about this whistleblower that's coming to him. So we don't know who it is for certain. Schellenberger says that he's had all of his credibilities checked and that he is who he says he is. But that's, again, just us taking Schellenberger's word on it. But we don't know who it is exactly, and we don't know what function they serve within the US government or military. And yeah, we've got no evidence of the information. But what I'm going to just do is I'm just going to see if I can share this document with you. Hold on. That's not what I want to do. It's been a while since I've done share screen. I try to avoid doing share screen because it's a bit laborious. So I think it's that one. So I'm gonna have to get me out of the picture again. So hopefully you can still hear me. But yeah, this is as I said, this isn't the official document. I've just taken sections of what I found was interesting in that bit that I've just read you about there. But the guy that is the whistleblower that's given all the information to Schellenberger goes on to sort of say about some of the data and the evidence that these different parties or groups, secret groups within the US military and the US government, the data and the information they have. And this is just the first one here about a cuboid formation of metallic orbs. We've got a fast mover observed transmitting over sensitive facilities, intelligent vessels positioned to collect on reproduction vehicle, equilateral triangle UAP tails and Whiting vessel. These are all military, because the data has been supposedly taken by military infrared cameras, radar, and they've got all this information. This one I felt was really interesting. Large disk using clouds as concealment. On US government networks, there exists OPIR footage of a large saucer-shaped UAP emerging from within a dense cloud formation. The saucer registers black hot against white cold, with atmospheric disturbances caused by the saucer-shaped UAP visible. The saucer was between 200 and 400 meters in circumference and displayed symmetrical concavities on the upper surface. The saucer-shaped UAP emerges at a shallow angle, traveling upwards towards the outer atmosphere. After breaking above the cloud cover, the saucer-shaped UAP suddenly reverses its direction, descending and partially back into the cloud cover, then accelerating rapidly out of frame and partially obscured by the cloud tops. This behavior was evasive in nature and implied that the saucer-shaped UAP had become aware that it was under observation by a space-based collection platform. So yeah, that's just a couple of examples of, and that's off of one big long document which you can pull off yourself from, let me know in chat, Courtney, if I'm getting this right, but yeah, I think it was the main congressional website. I pulled some documents off of the subcommittee's website, which is the Oversight and Accountability Committee. But I think that's where Courtney got his from. And I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, but I haven't pulled off the testimonies of Schellenberger, because I just thought, do you know what? Again, why have we got a journalist standing in front of Congress on live TV, being broadcast to the world, who will not share his source when ultimately this was, in his own statements, he's there to say that the government should stop being secret about all of this UAP stuff and, give the public more disclosure. But at the same time, he's saying, I can't tell you who it is because it's got to remain secret. It's actually quite an ironic thing, and yeah, quite a bit of a circus going on, really. just going back to those highlights that were on the video, there was some, like, I guess, a little bit of meaty information there, definitely giving you the consensus that there's something going on, and there's more questions to be asked. We definitely can't say there's nothing going on, whether it's still, because a lot of this could be down to experimental, highly classified military technology that other members of, different government sections are being kept in the dark because of the amount of money being spent on it, and it's being vented through back channels. And this is what all the hoo-ha is about. Who knows? There's a million possible explanations why we find ourselves in this world of potential disclosure, but it is just potential disclosure. So I was talking earlier about oh, we got another comment coming through. Oh no, Courtney just giving thumbs up that it was. I was obviously right that it was pulled off of the congressional, directly from the congressional website. I have put, I think, some links in the description. Let me just. I've not been using any of my banners this evening, which is pretty terrible. But there you go. Links are in the description. But I don't think I put a link to that particular document. As I said, I only pulled parts of it. It was a huge 20-page document. Some of the other testimonies that I pulled off from the Committee of Oversight and Accountability's website are a little bit shorter and easier to digest, I'll be honest. Yeah, so where was I? Circle of disclosure. Let me just take a drink a minute because I've been talking for quite a while. I've got terrible dry mouth. Anyway, so circle of disclosure. Recently, I've been looking into some other sources, and particularly Carl Sagan. And I don't know if you guys know who Carl Sagan is. I've got a picture of him here. This is Carl Sagan just towards when he died. I think he passed in 1996. But Carl Sagan was primarily, he was an astronomer, and he had masters in physics. Really, really, again, an intelligent guy coming from science. He was very heavily involved in, I think he helped put together the initial message that got put out to aliens. And but he's also released several books. Well, not several, a lot of books, and all talking about the cosmos, from an astronomy point of view, but also some books related to the ufology side of, astronomy. And, he also wrote the book Contact, which the film is based on, which Robert Zemeckis did a beautiful job of directing and created some amazing camera work in that film. But yes, you're right, Courtney. Courtney's just put it in chat, so we must have been coming out with it just at the same time. But yeah, just bring that up on screen, Courtney. Yeah, thank you. Also wrote the book Contact, and yeah, he did. So. And what's interesting about Contact, and again, sorry to go back to the film because I know it's fictional, it's not real life, but it's it's from the mind of somebody like Carl Sagan and all of these different possibilities. And what's interesting about that book and that film is that what we start with is this phenomenal revelation that we've been contacted by another intelligent life form somewhere else in the universe, in a different galaxy. And it's all very, very public, shared with the world. Then towards the end of the film, the real thing that you're waiting for, the meat on the bone, happens. But then afterwards, the government finds some way to suppress the information and the reality of what actually happened. So towards the end of the film, you see this thing where the main guy who's investigating it says, well, we didn't pick anything up on your head cam. All we picked up was static. So that doesn't prove anything, doesn't help you. And we've got camera footage of you dropping down straight away, and it all lasted like 8 seconds or something like that, when actually she felt that she was gone for about 18 hours. And then we find out towards the end of the film that there's this government conversation going on, and, they reveal that there was 18 hours of static. So it would have gone a long way. And so at the end of the film, you're given the impression that the members of the public in that fantasy world are now back to that whole, it was a load of rubbish. It was all a big hoax that was put on by this elaborate billionaire. And, you know, funny enough, that was written a long time ago by Carl Sagan. And Carl Sagan, being a little bit older than myself, would have seen probably some other evolutions, other circles of this disclosure. Because the main thing is that the world is getting, or the mainstream world is getting themselves in a bit of a tiz about the fact that people are coming into government hearings on live TV and talking about, you know, UFOs and UAPs, when in actual fact that's been happening since the 1940s. You know, we had in Roswell, as you know, on the first day of the incident of Roswell, US military people visited the site, then spoke to journalists, and then said that what they discovered was an alien craft. Then the next day, the US government then posted another article saying, actually, we were wrong. No, we weren't. And the thing is, the people that were there on the original day were scientists, people that worked at the local base where they were testing, doing the first test of nuclear weapons. They were, you know, the only few nuclear scientists in the world. And these were people that went to the site. And then days later, the US government, the US military then say, no, it wasn't that. Then a few days after that, they then post pictures with the people involved, with what they found. And later on, we find out that those people that were in the pictures, like Jesse Marcel, came forward and said, you know, just before he died, he said that wasn't what we found on that first day. What they made us, you know, stand in front of and take the pictures for the newspaper and for the investigation wasn't the same material. That was just a normal weather balloon. So you had that back in 1947. Then you had more disclosure and more public talks about it with, excuse me, I've forgotten his name. It's disgraceful of me, but the guy that came up with the, if anybody knows in chat, please put it in there, save myself getting super frustrated. But the guy that came up with all the different gradings, so the close encounter of the first kind, second kind, and third kind, had a lot of exposure around certain government projects that were happening in the 60s and 70s. Then in the mid-90s, we had a lot of disclosure about Rendlesham, which happened in the 1980s in the UK. And we felt that we were on the precipice then. So this feeling like we're on the precipice and this feeling of military and government people stepping forward has happened before. It's not that it's never happened and this is all brand new. And what happens, though, is you always, like with any circle, there's a peak and there's a non-part. There's a light part and there's a dark part. And then after you get to this peak of what seems like being on the precipice of disclosure, what always happens is it goes back to the dark side of the circle, starts going down to where we get to the point where people think we're back to square one. This is all a bit of a ridiculous notion. Let's stop talking about it. It's all only for crazy people. Hi, Nick. Thank you so much, Courtney. You are the man. Yes, it was Heineck. I'm now struggling to remember his first. No, not Jesse. I get him mixed up with Jesse Marcel. But we know it's Heineck. Yes, you're absolutely 100% correct. Thank you so much for sharing that. Put me out of my misery. All these names that float around in this small brain of mine, I can't always remember them. But, you know, it was a good example where I was showing that this isn't the first time. J. Allen Hynek, yes. I think it's John, isn't it? John Allen Hynek. Anyway, if you don't know about him, it's a really good read if you want to look at the sort of scientific side of ufology and how even the most scientific person can get their mind changed by delving into the subject too deep. But so yes, you know, you always get this then peak. So I'm going to pause that there and I'll come back in just a moment. And just to break up me just boringly sitting here talking to you, I then, you know, you guys have shared some of your thoughts and opinions on the hearings. Keep them coming. Let me know if there's anything specific that stood out to you that you came away with, or you're thinking after either you've watched just the highlight video that I shared, or you've actually watched the full hearings. Let me know in comments what you think. But I reached out to some people within my sort of like, you know, paranormal and ufology community, people that I trust their way of looking at things and their viewpoints. So I reached out to my good friend Ben from the 401 Files, asked him to give me some thoughts, which I've slammed onto a video with some music. And then I've got someone else's opinion to talk to you about as well.
So I'm sure that a lot of you have recently heard or seen about the UFO congressional hearings that have taken place. And it's quite a phenomenon in itself, really, because these are becoming more and more frequent. And, you know, when I was growing up and when I was getting first fascinated with the subject of UFOs and extraterrestrials, we only presumed that people sat around a table to discuss these subjects. Usually it was all done behind closed doors, whereas now friends get together, they buy popcorn, they sit at home on the sofa, they tune in, and it's almost become like this spectacle, this pantomime, if you will. And that was never a thing growing up for me. So, yeah, I get asked a lot about these congressional hearings and whether or not I think there will one day be the evidence that we need to come from an event like this. And I always say the same thing. I don't genuinely think we'll get the answers we want from a congressional hearing. I really don't. And the reason I've come to that conclusion is because before they ever step foot into that room, before they ever sit down at their tables and read anything off a piece of paper, they've already been briefed. And I imagine, quite sternly, that if they speak about certain things or they touch on other subjects that might be of a military nature, there's going to be repercussions. Now, subconsciously, when you walk into that room and you've been briefed in this manner, you're going to be very cautious about what to say and what not to say. You don't want to be the one that brings these hearings to an end or, you know, puts a full stop to them in the future because of something that you've said or done. And so they're already treading on eggshells, and for me that is not a good setting when we're trying to be black and white, when we're trying to be transparent and open with the public. So do I think that these hearings will one day give us all the answers, and do I think that evidence will come from them one day in the future? Unfortunately not. I think that evidence will come from the guy on the ground. The guy that's out there walking his dog, the girl that's on horseback, the guy riding his bike through the forest. They'll be the people that somehow, somewhere produce evidence that is undeniable, not a congressional hearing.
So that was Ben's thoughts, and thank you so much, Ben, for sharing them with me. And I've put a link in the description to Ben's channel. He's also done an episode where he gives his thoughts on the hearings. But if you haven't checked out Ben's channel, the 401 Files, please do go and check that out. Just remember, I'm not using many of my sound effects, but yeah, I was going to play this one just before I was going to play
Warning.
that video.
Some viewers may find the following footage deeply disturbing. Warning.
There you go. All good fun games. Just like to keep yourself interested. Yeah, so that was Ben's thoughts. And I think a good summary of what Ben was saying there is that it's all turning into a bit of a pantomime. Like, one of the things that I've talked a lot about in the past is how all of this feels like a smoke screen to sort of either take our attention off of what is actually going on, or just to kind of get to that crescendo point where it can be squashed and buried again. So I also wanted to use, there's another guy called Justin from Mountain Beast Mysteries. He's done a video because Justin's channel was primarily, I guess, you know, it's fair to say it was birthed from, you know, an interest in Sasquatch and Bigfoot and cryptozoology. So hence the Mountain Beast Mysteries. But over the last couple of years, Justin has kind of sort of fallen into the UFO phenomena as well, based on some personal experiences that he's had and some great footage that he's caught. But he was basically, in his latest video, which I wanted to take a snippet of, but I reached out to get permission to use the snippet of him talking, but I was a bit short notice, really, to be honest with you, and I haven't heard back from him, so I'm not going to do it without his permission. But I certainly can talk about it to you guys. What's that coming from, Sean? Turn an eye to a pantomime. Oh no, it isn't. Yes, it does seem a little bit like a pantomime, doesn't it? Yeah. So, and what Justin was saying in his video, just to summarize, and he kind of really hit it hard in the first 30 seconds. He was talking a lot about how if you go through the hearings, there's this overriding sort of theme of taxpayer, and them talking about they need transparency because they need to understand if there are these sectors of government, secret parties and groups that are using government funding, military funding, and spending it on these projects where they're in the dark. Like, nobody has oversight over it, and that's where the word oversight comes in, right? Not the kind of other oversight which I'm thinking when I see some of their questions that they ask. OMG, just put a couple of people that have been studying ufology for a few decades in one of those hearings to ask them the questions. You'll have actually some then decent questions asked. Some of the questions that those Congress people ask are just, ugh. Anyway, that's another point. But, what Justin was saying is that there just seems to be this sort of thing where they're just putting it down to taxpayers and wanting to have full transparency on what money's being spent on. Anyway, so I'm going to go into that, but in a sort of, I've got a slightly different take, but it kind of merges with both what Justin's been saying and what Ben was saying there over on the 401 files. And I'm just going to share a document with you to sort of talk about this a little bit. Well, it's not going to talk about this, but I just want to bring it to your attention now before I forget. So I'm just going to bring that up on the screen. There we go. So this is actually the testimony from Dr. Tim Gallaudet, Rear Admiral, U.S. Navy, retired. He's also the CEO of Ocean STL Consulting, LLC, former acting Undersecretary and Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, and acting administrator of the Deputy Administrator of NOAA, whatever that is. So I've highlighted some things from his testimony, and in his testimony, he goes straight at it. FYI, I've got the guy from NASA's testimony, so I can show it to you as well, so that I'm not making it up. But actually, I'm gonna read some of it to you because it's a bit ridiculous. Anyway, so this is the retired admiral. And he's also a doctor. Confirmation that UAPs are interacting with humanity came for me in January 2015 when I was serving as the commander of the Naval Meteorology and Oceanography Command. At the time, my personnel were participating in a pre-deployment naval exercise off the U.S. East Coast that included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. This exercise was overseen by the United States Fleet Forces Command, led by 4-star Admiral, who also served as my superior officer. During this exercise, I received an email on the Navy Secure Network from the Operations Officer of Fleet Forces Command. The email was addressed to all subordinate commanders, and subject line read in all capital letters, urgent safety of flight issue. The text of the email was brief but alarming, with words to the effect, if any of you know of what these are, tell me ASAP. We are having multiple near mid-air collisions, and if we do not resolve it soon, we will have to shut down the exercise. Attached to the email was what is known as the Go Fast video, which we saw in the earlier rounds of hearings, captured on a forward-looking infrared sensor on board one of the Navy FA-18 aircraft participating in the exercise. The now declassified video showed an unidentified object exhibiting flight and structural characteristics unlike anything in our arsenal. The implications of the email was clear. The author was asking whether any of the recipients were aware of classified technology demonstrations that could explain these objects, because DoD policy is to rigorously deconflict such demonstrations with live exercises. I was confident this was not the case. The very next day, the email disappeared from my account and those of the other recipients without explanation. Moreover, the commander of Fleet Forces and his operations officer never discussed the incident again, even during weekly meetings specifically designed to address issues affecting exercises like the one in which the Theodore Roosevelt Strike Group was participating. This lack of follow-up was concerning, as the Navy's chief meteorologist at the time, my primary duty was to reduce safety of flight risks. Yet it was evident that no one at the flag officer level was addressing the safety risk posed by these UAPs. Instead, pilots were left to mitigate these threats on their own without guidance or support. I concluded that the UAP information must have been classified within the Special Access Program managed by the Intelligence Agency. A compartmented program that even senior officials, including myself, were not to read into. Last year's UAP hearing before this oversight committee confirmed that UAP-related information is not only being withheld from senior officials and members of Congress, but elements of the government are engaging in a disinformation campaign to include personal attacks designed to discredit UAP whistleblowers. There you go. I'm gonna stop there. But yeah, all really, really interesting information. But again, it's the lack of bringing any absolute tangible evidence. Again, if somebody was sitting there in front of me, with me, interviewing them, I'd be like, "Have you got any physical evidence, or have you got any video evidence or document evidence that you can pass us during this testimony or not?" No. Then move on, because it's wasting everybody's time. So yeah, I just thought I would share some of them with you. Now, again, going back to some of my thoughts around all of this, really come into play when you then fast forward 1 week and you go into, so we had these 4 guys come and stand in front of Congress and say that there's all this secret stuff going on, and certain elements of the government and the military don't know what other elements of the government and military are doing and what they're spending money on, and we all need to know, and it's not fair that we're all kept in the dark. And then, as I said, you fast forward to 19th of November, and then we have the Senate hearings. Okay, now they're a different kettle of fish. This is in attendance by Arrow. Now, we've spoken about Arrow a lot on this channel before. Arrow, as you all know, is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. These are the guys. Oops, sorry, I think I've got some connection issues. FYI, I forgot to say at the beginning of the podcast. I'm surprised it's not gone down yet. We've had Storm Dara, I think it's called, in the UK over this weekend, and there's just been so much damage. I'm surprised there's even any internet where I'm connected at the moment and not been disconnected. And the winds down where I am have just been absolutely insane. So fingers crossed, keep going all the way to the end. But sorry if there's a little bit of lag. I'm sure the internet in the area is not good right now. So the Senate hearings. Right, so I've got some video footage, which I'm going to share in a minute. But the United States Senate Armed Services Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities heard testimony on Tuesday, November the 19th, from John T. Koslowski. He's the director of Pentagon's All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And a lot of people are already saying, let's get him out. Let's get somebody else heading it up. Anyway, so the U.S. Department of Defense created the office back in July 2022 in order to have a single place for military and government personnel to report UFO sightings, or UAP as they're now known. The new term, short for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena, encompasses not only unidentified objects or events in the sky, but also those in the water or in space, or those that appear to travel between these domains. Now, in the hearings, Arrow, the highlights were that Arrow released its latest unclassified public version of the UAP report on November 14th, 2024. The report contains 757 new cases of sightings. As is usual, most cases were found to have commonplace explanations. The report also notes 21 unexplained cases. It calls them truly anomalous. So far, Arrow has been unable to explain these 21 cases. Now, it's really important, if you watch the hearings, that that's not the way they packaged that statement. They almost set this tone that it's just because they haven't got around to working out what they are yet, basically, and that's why they're anomalous. And as part of this same hearing, what they did, and this is where I'm going to show you on the video, this guy who's the head, the president of, or the director, I should say, sorry, of Arrow, John T. Koslowski. He goes on to do this presentation, and back in 2022, we were presented. Obviously they were doing their circles and rounds before this, before 2022, but we were presented with like the Tic Tac footage, the gimbal footage, the FLIR footage, and basically in this hearing, what this guy does is he comes to explain a lot of it away. Watch the video, and I will stop it.
This video was taken with infrared, and what appears to be the transmedium part where it goes into the water is actually where the temperature of the water is equal to the temperature of the object, and the camera can no longer distinguish between the two. It's not that the object actually goes into the water. And so we assessed that the object, likely a pair of balloons or sky lanterns, was...
Right, I've got to stop it there. So when he was talking about how it was a change in temperature, not it actually going in and out of the water, because they're using an infrared camera that picks up on certain temperatures, I could go with that. But then when he goes on to say, have we heard this before? Oh, it was a balloon or it was a lantern. Now, I'm sorry, but if it was a balloon or a lantern, it's sure moving fast. And secondly, do you think it would have taken all of this time, 2 years, for a bunch of specialists that are experts in their field to work out that it's a balloon or a sky lantern? Also, you've got to remember, with not all of this footage, but some of this footage that he goes on to talk about, and I'm going to play the rest in just a moment. Some of it, we've got testimonies from military officials that were actually on ground or part of these incidents that gave reports on the maneuverability of these, and gave some identity of the fact that they looked something that they had never seen before, as experts of knowing all kind of military grade what's going on out there, and so for them to just come and then say this is our explanations, bit strange.
7 knots
Carry on.
over the airport and descending to about 200 meters. The Go Fast was captured the public attention and congressional attention when it was made public in 2017. Looks like an object flying very fast over the water, very close to the water. Through a very careful geospatial intelligence analysis using trigonometry, we assess with high confidence that the object is not actually close to the water, but is rather closer to...
Don't you love this? This is the director of Arrow presenting in the US Senate, and this is his most intelligent looking piece of graph evidence to explain why he's giving the explanation that the item is not as close to the ocean as it appears, when you first watch
13,000 feet. An interesting case, which I don't believe the public is familiar with, is...
And again, this is not been cut or edited. This is his full explanation, and it's just skimming through this stuff.
Assess with high...
And I just want to go back to something he said there, actually. Here we go. That's it. Through a very careful geospatial intelligence analysis using trigonometry. What on earth? Let's just actually, I've not done this yet, so let me just do it live on air. Let's just Google geospatial, what is it? Geospatial intelligence analysis. See if this is a thing. Geospatial intelligence is the analysis of geographic information to describe, assess, and visualize physical features and activities on Earth. It involves collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data from a variety of sources, such as satellite imagery, aerial photography. So is that what he's pointing out in the map or in the graph that he shares?
Spatial intelligence analysis using trigonometry, we assess with high confidence that the object is not flying very fast over the
Sorry, I'm
water,
just trying to find the part where the there we go.
actually close to the water, but is
Oh, he's
rather
saying it's a
closer to
plane.
13,000 feet. An interesting case, which I don't believe the public is familiar with, is captured in 2018 from a UAV flying in the Mediterranean, watching Mount Etna as it was erupting. And it appears that that object is flying through the plume of superheated gas and ash. This was a rather difficult case to resolve. We had to pull in support from a number of IC and S&T partners and even reach out to a volcanologist. And through very detailed 3D modeling and pixel by pixel analysis of the object as it's traversing across the clouds, they assessed that the object was actually 170 meters away from the plume and not flying through it. And to be clear, Aero does not believe every object is a bird, a balloon.
So it's really interesting that he just gave us that explanation, but didn't actually explain how or why it looks like it's flying through the cloud if it was actually 170 meters away from any plume. So again, very, very like, imagine if this was the other way around. If I was going into a Senate hearing with a video like this and saying this was what proves that these are intelligence from an unknown origin, because look, you could just see it there, you know, and I don't know, I was just shocked at the level of kind of presentation, which again isn't surprising since it was a bit of a car crash in the last round of, or in the first round of UAP hearings where they couldn't even get the computer to work. So yeah, it's all, it again just leaves you with this like crazy this crazy sort of feeling that, again, it's like a smoke screen. But it's really interesting that this was a matter of days after the hearings for the Oversight and Accountability Committee in Congress. And effectively, one of them is, you know, suppressing and really punching down and saying, there's nothing to this. We've got explanations. The ones that we haven't got explanations for, we'll get them eventually. It's all being explained away now. All the go fast stuff and things like that we said before, you know, ignore us. And so it definitely feels to me like we're going on the down curve. So I'm going to give you my overall thoughts or my theory, and it doesn't verge away too much from what I've shared in the past. I don't think there was ever any chance of disclosure from these hearings. Again, I think what happens if you take this cycle of disclosure, you get an upward trend where it feels that you're on the precipice and then it goes down. And again, I was watching a video. What was that gentleman's name? So there was a gentleman by the name of Colonel Carl Nell, and he was doing recently a presentation, a speech at a conference, and the conference was for, I think it's called, what are they called? I've got the page open somewhere. I think it's on my iPad. SALT. So basically, SALT is a community of the world's foremost investors, creators, and thinkers. Our mission is to drive prosperity and innovation by connecting investment capital with intellectual capital. So it's a conference that takes place in the US, attended by lots of investors that are wanting to invest into technology, etc. But speaking at this latest conference was Colonel Carl Nell, who is basically, he's been an aerospace executive, he's been a senior military officer, and he's a corporate strategist. He's a very well-educated guy. I watched the whole speech of what he was talking about, and because he's got some background and study in philosophy as well, he started to go on about some philosophy points of view, and he spoke about it really well, obviously because of his background in philosophy. He felt very confident with it. So it was a very strong theory, and that is that would we have ever got disclosure? Probably not, because right now a lot of people that sit on that sort of area of ufology, that sit on the fringe of philosophy, will tell you that we're still not ready as a society to have this information. There's still a lot of people that feel that society just wouldn't cope with the reality that we're not alone in the universe. There's definitely, when you go out there to public opinion now, the needle is moving to a lot of people sort of seeing the reality side of it, and the fact that there must be, life elsewhere in this gigantic, massive, endless universe. But then when you ask the question, do you believe that they're here right now or have visited planet Earth, that needle starts going down a little bit more. And but generally there's this philosophical sort of point of view that we think of ourselves as we've evolved, and we're embracing technology, but we're still very adolescent in our kind of thinking and our mindset. And I just don't think, I personally think that, again, it's an area that I sit on the fence with, because either the revelation would collapse elements of society, or it might actually fix us, where we've got all of this, wars and conflict areas around the world, even right now. And maybe if we knew that we weren't alone and that actually we were just one race, and we need to worry more about ourselves and this planet, maybe it would bring us all together a little bit more. That would be my hope. But as I said, I'm just telling you that there's a lot of people out there, certainly in ufology circles as well, that sit in that sort of fringe area of looking at it from a philosophical point of view, and just don't think we're ready. And this is one of the things that Colonel Carnell was saying. And he said, so if there's going to be disclosure, it's going to be drip fed. And why I honed in on that is because it sort of really leans back to what I'm saying about this circle of disclosure. Because you get these peak bits where you think you're on the precipice, and little bits, little dribs come out that desensitize certain populations of the public to it. And then what happens is you find, and I've seen it again in my lifetime before all of this, that it gets squashed again, and it then gets put back into the realm of the ridiculous until you get to the back end of the cycle again, and it comes back out. And each time it's just getting us a little bit more and more, and a little bit more of the general populace into that sort of more yes side of the needle. And I'm like, there's a lot of people that already think that 2022 was now the peak of this current cycle, and now we're on the downward cycle, and we're going to go into the black very soon, where all of a sudden it'll become a really almost ridiculous subject to talk about and stop talking about. And it feels like all of this, both the congressional hearings and the Senate hearings, are being set up to do that already. Just this month, under a month ago, the head of ARROW, the special committee that's brought together, has already stood there and said, no, actually, all of these ones. And again, whether we believe it or not, because as I said to you, there's people on the ground, other military officials that have come forward, pilots that have actually were flying around these, that have come forward and said, so it kind of goes beyond what these people think looking at this footage. But they forget to say that in the hearings, and forget to point towards that. But everybody just goes away thinking, and when I say everybody, the general public, not people like me that are passionately interested in ufology and go into all the information, but people that just read the headlines or just read the social media posts or whatever, they will go away now thinking that, well, actually, once again, it's all been proven as crap. I think the Congress thing about chasing the taxpayer or tax information, which Justin was sort of talking about and leaning towards, is again another way to bring an end to any activity or anything that's going on around this, because it's a way of them saying, well, if you haven't announced this as a taxing, then you can't continue, and we're going to close you down. Or they'll just go into hiding and stop doing what they're doing. But again, it definitely still feels part of that agenda to bring us down to that downward cycle. And I think in the next few years, instead of more disclosure, actually what we're going to get is now the US government military backpedaling on what they've said so far. Again, happened with Roswell. All of a sudden they went, yep, this is an alien craft. And then the next day they went, no, it isn't. It's a weather balloon. And it feels like that's happening again. And that's my overall vibe. I think there's a tactic, a strategy to this. Who knows? Even the people that are part of the ones that are giving the testimony, like Louis Elizondo, he's worked for the Department of Defense before, only just 5 years ago. Maybe he is part of that agenda as well, and that all of this is just to kind of shed some light on it, make people think, oh, we're being transparent, and then actually we're really not. And it just keeps all the people like me suppressed at banging at their door. Come on, be transparent, give us disclosure. We know something's going on. We've got the evidence. We've got the information. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts. Let me know in comments if you're still with me after all of that rambling. Let me know what you think. That's my overall consensus. I think we will see some more hearings come in, but I just think they're going to be going to eventually. I think this immaculate constellation will be proven to be that there's no evidence for it, that certain subcommittees have investigated it, and there is no tangible evidence that there is such a thing as this ultimate constellation. And in 2 to 4 years, we'll be questioning why we ever thought it actually was possible, or general members of the public will be questioning again why they actually thought it was possible for a second that there actually might be aliens out there. So again, that's just my thoughts and feelings. Guys, everyone that's been helping me with comments, sharing their thoughts, thank you so much. I'm hoping, as I said, I was planning to get some guests on to the show, and I can't wait to have someone join me. It's always easier talking to somebody else on the stream than sitting here just talking away to what seemingly feels like yourself. But I know you guys are with me, so that your comments are really important and they really count. What have we got there from Courtney? He says, to paraphrase Congressman Tim Burchett, if a UAP phenomenon is not real, why all the secrecy and the threats? Yeah, don't think for 1 minute that I'm not saying that the UAPs are not real, but I'd still think it's a bit of a song and a dance. And as some of us say in conspiracy circles, not that I consider myself a conspiracy theorist whatsoever, but, talk about things like smoke screens, and there's all this stuff going on over here that makes you look at that when actually there's loads of interesting stuff going on over here, and your eyes not on it, and we're not talking about it, and they're able to just kick it through. But yeah, there's something that tells me that we're on the downward spiral, especially after the Senate hearings, and just the ridiculous reasoning that was given publicly as to why they've proven or squashed these elements of evidence, which I think, again, imagine it on the flip side. I'll try and put a link to that video, but go and check it out. It's called UFO Videos Explained During US Senate Hearing. And if you flipped it around the other side and it was somebody saying, this is why aliens are real, it would really strain belief just how simple his explanations are, not really giving us the details that we require. Maybe there would be more information in the testimonies, because every time people appear and stand there and talk in front of Senate or Congress, they have to submit a testimony first. As Ben was saying in his footage, they already know what you're going to say, and they already tell you before you go in there what you're not allowed to say. So if we're looking for things like transparency and disclosure, it just doesn't exist, just due to the nature of the process. So going back to what Ben said, I think it's just going to have to come from a member of the public. Somebody somewhere at some point is going to be able to produce something physical, something that's a material thing, or something that just cannot be denied because of the nature of the evidence, and somebody who does the right thing and gets, so we can check out the size, and then we can see the time, and we can see the date, and we can see other people in the video, and we get witness statements from them as well. And everything, is above board, and everything really spot on. I think that's the way it's going to happen. But will it ever happen? Are these people now experts at being able to hide and bury information really quickly? And even the best evidence could come forward and they'd find a way to flip it around, like they have done with the go fast. Who knows? Again, guys, I'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Sunday. I don't know if I'll have guests with me for that show. As I said, I think it's going to be after Christmas till we get the guys back on from the Unexplained Files UK. But who knows? I might have somebody pop along. But I'm sure we'll be talking about another paranormal, exciting subject. And again, thank you guys for joining me this evening. And I'll see you next time. Bye.